Kia ora tātou. Te arawa waka, te arawa wānanga, Ngāti Wakaue, tēnei a Taranaki Mounga me i nei kia koutou. Kei ngā maunga, kei ngā moana, kei ngā waka o te motu, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou i te auatanga o tēnei kaupapa nui. Nō reira, ko Taranaki Mounga tēnei e tūnei, e mihi nei kia tātou katoa. I'm mindful, whānau, that it's been a long day. And I was going to give over my time to Shemabil. But I'll keep this short, and it's really an opportunity to talk about Ka Uruora, iwi-led solutions. And what I want to cover off briefly is our kaupapa, talk about our delivery models and the stages that we've gone through in terms of refining what we do and how we do it to deliver to the needs of our whānau, our approach to the housing continuum, and it's reassuring that our economist here is actually what he talked about in terms of a tenure security and affordable rental is very much the space that we at Ka Uruora are in. Then talk about our current housing program, how we are empowering whānau on their journey, and how we're looking to expand to enable a lot of our other rohe and iwi throughout the motu to advance their particular housing aspirations for whānau.
Ka Uruora te rangi, Ka Uruora te papa. Ka Uruora ngā tāngata, ko te ho Ka Uruora ki te kaununuku, ko te ho Ka Uruora ki te kaununui, ko te ho Ka Uruora ki te kauroroa. Hoira he uruora, ki te whai au, ki te ao marama e.
Ka Uruora was established to quite simply disrupt status quo, to shift the dial on systemic housing issues that have become our reality. It's an iwi-led kaupapa delivering kaupapa Māori kāinga solutions and services for our whānau and communities.
I have 5 children, number 6 is on the way. I embarked on this home ownership program because of the opportunities to be on our whenua. It was where I wanted to be, and also because of the support. Having someone there, having a rōpū there to maintain the momentum and to push and to be able to explain and clarify what's going on. The people that were part of this right from the beginning I saw as being strong leaders, within our own community, our own hapori Māori here. It was more than I expected. When you think of things traditionally, our iwi served us, right? We served each other, and I see this as part of that. As an iwi, as a hapu, as a marae, we're there for each other. Ka Uruora is the rōpū, as the arms, the ringa that are helping you.
It's the whare itself and the whenua that it sits on. It's pretty special. It's pretty special to have your own home and to be able to know that you have a home to be able to not only live in with yourself and with my partner, but we also have a home that we can have our whānau come to and to fill our home with warm memories, laughter. We get to fill our whare with the people that we love, and with our whānau being able to be a part of that. So yeah, for me, favourite part is actually having a home to call my own.
And having been knocked down previously in other areas of the motu, it was nice to come back home, be surrounded by whānau, and have them in your corner and backing you, so that the journey towards home ownership is more than realistic. It's just an actuality. Look, working with Ka Uruora, wonderful experience, something we were not expecting or prepared for. The massive arms being wrapped around us and really throwing us towards the desired outcome, which we just really appreciate, and we will never be able to thank them enough.
Ka Uruora ngā tangata, ka Uruora ngā wānanga, he Uruora ki te waiao ki te ao marama.
Kia ora whānau, that's really what Ka Uruora is about. It's about whānau, it's about care, it's about love, it's about taking responsibility. And the genesis of Ka Uruora comes from this particular karakiatanga kōrero of Taranaki, which actually speaks to health, well-being and prosperity in a holistic sense. And it was inspired by initially our two iwi, Te Atiawa and Taranaki, recognising that we needed to do something different. If we wanted to change the experience for our whānau and our mokopuna to come, we needed to think differently about how we invested our settlement proceeds and how we partnered with whomever aligned with our vision and values to deliver better outcomes for our whānau within Taranaki, and this of course has spread throughout the motu. And so that's the journey we've been on. We've really had our whānau at the centre, and Shemabil talked about this is not about the individual, this is about the whānau, this is about the collective. And very much our approach is one of empowering and ensuring that we take responsibility for each other. Te Ingoa in the video spoke about that very point, that we exist to serve and be responsible for each other, because that's that reciprocal relationship that we have. Now in that, we have a range of tools that we've developed to support our whānau to be successful to reach their particular aspirations. And it really started with financial education, because we recognise that understanding how you might manage your own money, your own budget, how you might set financial goals for your whānau and for the broader whānau was really important to create a really great foundation for better decision making, but importantly that if we could build the financial capability and understanding, our whānau would have better choices. And so that was a really key focus for us around supporting our whānau to develop their financial literacy and doing that in ways which worked for our whānau. The second element there was whānau saver. So we're very grateful to Ngāi Tahu, who basically provided all of their insight and experience in their savings program. And the whānau saver program is really about getting our whānau into the habit of saving, because it is a habit and it's not easy. And it's very hard when you're living week by week. And so we recognise that iwi, in order to inspire our whānau to get into the habit of saving, we needed to be on that journey with them. And so our whānau saver program, it's not a Kiwi Saver program, but it is a program where each of the participating iwi will contribute up to $100 to every dollar that a whānau member, an individual from that iwi, saves. So if hone invested or saved $300 a year, the iwi would match $100. If hone was lucky to whakapapa to 3 iwi in Taranaki, he would get a $300 match. And so, the whānau saver program for us is really important, and actually demonstrating the power of compound interest and $2 a week, what that creates in 20 years' time for a baby that is born today, providing that ability to have a deposit or contribution towards a home. So that's our whānau saver program. And then the final piece was a recognition that some of the big challenges that our whānau face is tenure security, is having a warm, dry home. And when we talk about housing, we don't necessarily talk about home ownership. Initially, it was all about home ownership, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the insights that we've had from a lot of the work that we've done and the data that we've collected and the engagement that we've had with whānau, which have demonstrated some of the challenges they have, but also what the opportunities are to match a particular solution to the whānau need. So I just thought I'd talk briefly about our delivery model. So you'll see that Ka Uruora is there to really coordinate a range of activities. Ultimately, we're about improving whānau financial independence and well-being. Independence. Kua kōrero mātou mō tēnei mea, te mana motuhaketanga o te tū o te wānau me te rangatiratanga o te wānau ki aura rātou. And so very much about how we can enable and support our whānau to be much more independent. rather than dependent. And so there's a range of services and solutions that we provide at Ka Uruora, and we've got a number of our whānau that actually do the daily work, are working with our whānau in the room here today. I was actually going to tap out this presentation to some of our younger ones, but next time. And I think one of the real positive aspects about our model is that we are partnering with our iwi. And it's not the charitable arm of our iwi, we're actually partnering with our commercial arms. So our commercial arms are stepping up to invest in housing developments to get returns that may not necessarily be risk adjusted, but those returns are sufficient because we are also delivering an intergenerational social outcome for our whānau in our communities. So we have our iwi who are very much involved in the housing projects, and of course we've got our iwi registers and our iwi organisation supporting the program. But at the bottom there, our approach is very much a partnership approach, and it's leveraging every dollar that we're able to secure to deliver the outcomes that we and our whānau want. And so that's crowdfunding. We're very fortunate. And, Willie, I think back to the hui that we had, the iwi chairs hui in 2020 held at Ngāmotu. We talked about Ka Uruora and what we were doing. Willie talked about what they were doing in Te Tairāwhiti. And then this movement, this momentum began. Ngāhiwi Tomoana put his hand up to host the symposium 2 weeks later in Napier. And within 12 months, we had secured a budget bid with the government of over 750 million for Māori housing. One, because we were able to demonstrate a model that was going to deliver better outcomes than what was not being delivered currently. And so we're very much about partnering with the Crown, and we're grateful to Te Puni Kōkiri, to MHUD. We're very much about partnering with social and charitable entities. We're fortunate in Taranaki that we have the Toi Foundation, which owns the TSB Bank. They've been big supporters of our program. And throughout the motu, working with the likes of the Waikato Trust, Rata Foundation, and a number of these other philanthropic organisations, because they can see the value of our model and what it provides in terms of shifting that lived experience for our whānau. And so when you think about our model in terms of the delivery stages, we're ultimately, in this context, looking at housing solutions for iwi and whānau. And there are two parts to that. You'll see in green, it's very much about whānau engagement. And that's not easy. It's not easy because when our whānau have experienced the hardship, the poverty, the challenges, engaging to think about what those possibilities might be for the whānau can be a challenge. And so we have a team that are engaging, we're communicating, we're wanting to inspire our whānau to think about what they might want to do. The first step is financial education. Condition, if you want to be part of the Ka Uruora whānau, then you have a responsibility. You have obligations. You need to step up, you need to attend and complete our financial education program. And then, of course, we then work with our whānau to identify what their particular needs are and how we might match those particular needs with the housing solution that we're developing. And on the blue side there, what you see, I think one of the key aspects of our model is that our iwi commercial entities have come to the party. Taranaki, we're a raupatu rohe. So we didn't have land, a lot of Māori land, like many of you sitting in the room here today. Most of the land that we had was in perpetual lease, peppercorn rentals, leased to non-Māori. And so a big challenge for us in terms of re-establishing our whānau on our whenua has meant we have had to buy our land, that our iwi have had to buy our land. And we've had to build solutions which reduce the cost, because affordability is a major challenge for our whānau. And so that's the delivery model, and what I'm pleased to say, it's actually working, which is great. So we're putting the theory to practice and looking at how we can deliver the outcomes we want. We've had a bit of discussion today about the housing continuum. And when we embarked on this process initially we were about, shared equity was what it was called back then when we started, or progressive home ownership. And then of course we had those of our whānau that had the ability to buy homes. But we started, and I probably should have put a couple of the charts up here in terms of focusing on Māori household income for Māori households who don't own their own homes. And we've broken that down into regions, but also sort of on average what that looks like across the motu, across particular income bands. And so 30 to 35% of Māori households that don't own their own home have income of less than $40,000 a year. So 35%. We've got about 30%, and that 35%, in terms of the existing solution to meet their need, it sits within that sort of social community rental sort of space, that housing register. And we know there's 24,000 waiting on that register, let alone all of those families that have given up and haven't even bothered to put their name on the register. And so there is a solution, well, a semi-solution for that particular cohort of Māori households. And then at the other end, we've got progressive home ownership, and of course there are particular policy settings which look to enable whānau to achieve home ownership through that particular funding. But the reality is, whānau, that when we look at those that fit within the category of progressive home ownership, which is income between $70,000 and $100,000 a year, it's unaffordable. It's unaffordable. And so when we went through this process, we identified that there was a cohort of our households that were not being served by any particular policy intervention and or funding intervention. And that was the sort of 30% of Māori households that were earning between $40,000 and sort of $70,000 or $100,000. And so they were in this vicious private rental cycle. And so we identified that as being the biggest opportunity for our whānau, where we could work with the Crown to develop an affordable product, which essentially provides our whānau with security, where we enter into arrangements for 5 to 7 years. They also have some responsibilities and obligations, but it gives them secure tenure and certainty to be able to raise their families in safe, warm, dry homes and within safe communities. And so that's really where our focus is today, and where we're looking to expand. And what I'm pleased to say is that a lot of the insight and the material that we've provided to the government, the government now have an affordable rental fund. And so we're targeting that fund to be able to fund a number of the projects that we have around the motu. And so we're not closing ourselves to just focusing on whai kāinga, whai oranga or Māori funding. We believe that we are very much able to access those broader funds. And a lot of our focus has been to inform those policy decisions and those funding models to ensure that they meet the particular needs that we have. And so that's our continuum. And one of the other key sort of points, whānau, is that we put the whānau at the centre. And our model is one, if we can get one of our whānau in a community rental, we can work with that whānau over the 5 to 7 to 10 years to support them to progress or move through the housing continuum without having to leave a home and move to a new community, but we can change the status of that particular home that they have from a community rental to an affordable rental, and ideally to put them on the pathway to home ownership. So what are our current housing opportunities? So when we kicked this off in Taranaki a few years ago, and on the back of the iwi chairs we had, things really just got out of control, didn't they, Willie? The momentum sort of gathered. And our view was always that although Ka Uruora was born in Taranaki, that we had a responsibility to be able to share our model and encourage other iwi and rohe throughout the motu to join us. And I say join us because our model is very much about partnership. And I'm pleased to say, so our Tuuta Tō relations are building some homes in Tūrangi, and the first 5 or 6 are being opened on Thursday next week. And I like that particular model because working with Penny Homes, which are one of the big developers, not only in Taupo, but also a big contractor to Ka Uruora, are basically doing off-site manufacturing. And so for us, that was a really good opportunity to understand how that model might look. And it's really great to see that those houses, well, the first 6 or so of those houses will be open next week. But we have projects all over the country. We've got about 600 houses planned in our pipeline over the next 2.5, 3 years, and that will grow. We have a partnership with our collective iwi property development company called Hapai, which has a number of iwi investors, and we use that commercial entity to be able to deliver the social and community and whānau housing outcomes that we have across the motu. And so we've got a number of housing developments in Tāmaki Makaurau in the affordable rental space that we're able to provide opportunities for our iwi that are participants in Ka Uruora to have access to those homes at an affordable level. So when we talk about affordable rental, we say that it's 80% of market. And so that's the sort of sweet spot that we look at. But I guess really the key thing for us is, and probably the most satisfying sort of piece for all of us that are involved with Ka Uruora, is empowering whānau and seeing whānau flourish and enabling whānau to be able to achieve their particular aspirations. And I think we recognise that our approach in this investment is an intergenerational one. And so we're here for the long term, and we're wanting to continue to evolve and adapt what we do to work with our whānau to ensure that they are successful. And when we think about that, our whānau that are on the ground working with some of our households and our whānau, things like afterpay, lay-by, and all of those credit cards that you really can't afford. So it's having those sort of courageous conversations about cutting that credit card up, clearing your lay-bys, getting rid of afterpay, and changing our habits if we truly want to, have that independence and have that choice at a whānau level. And so that's very much the most exciting piece. And as I said earlier, so one of our sort of, it's not really Ka Uruora expanding, we just decided that there was huge benefit in having scale and not reinventing the wheel. And so leveraging from all of the work and investment that has been made to date. And so we now have Ka Uruora Aotearoa, and under Ka Uruora Aotearoa we have our Te Tauihu Collective, we have our Taranaki Collective, and I don't know whether Ki Te Raki to our Tai Tukurau whānau is necessarily the right sort of name for that area there, but it includes our whānau from Raukawa and Ngāti Maru. And so very much this is about how we scale up this model and how we drive efficiency, drive effectiveness, and really refine that model to deliver those outcomes. And a lot of that is every dollar that can be saved from administration is a dollar that can be spent at the front line delivering a housing solution and a housing outcome for our whānau. Nō reira, ka nui he nei kōrero i tēnei wā e te iwi. I'm mindful that we have a panel, and then I think one more speaker after that before we break for late afternoon tea, and everyone can get ready for this evening's events. Nō reira, huri noa, tēnā koutou, kei konei taku tira waiata, tēnā rā tātou katoa.